Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Hi and welcome. Today Great.com talks with Sandra Frank, who is the Chief Executive Officer of allfaithsfoodbank.org. And if you haven't heard of them before, they are a Florida-based food bank. And if you're new here, you definitely want to press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we're going to speak about the increasing problem of hunger in the US, especially as a result of the pandemic. Sandra, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Great today.
Oh, you know what? It's a privilege. It really is my honor to be here and talk about All Faiths Food Bank, the food bank network here in the United States, and the issue of hunger, which is now complicated and critical for everyone, I think, globally.
Right. I'm so curious to understand this a bit better, because it's I'm living in Stockholm. I'm obviously privileged, so I want to understand like the reality for the US citizens. But before we go there, could you tell me a little bit? I made a very short introduction. Could you tell me a little bit more about the All Faiths Food Bank for someone that is not familiar with the work that you guys do?
Certainly, it's my pleasure. We are, as I said, a member of the national organization Feeding America. And there are about 200 food banks in the country who are members of Feeding America, which is the country's largest charitable relief organization. And we are, like our colleagues, think of a warehouse and a distribution system. That's what a food bank is. And here we work with about 230 agencies and partners to help distribute food out to hundreds of thousands of people here in our community. So think warehouse, think racks, forklifts, and semi-trucks moving the food on large pallets out to smaller agencies who then provide the food or the meal to the individuals who come to that agency. So that's sort of the general concept of a food bank compared to a food pantry, which is a smaller agency that you often think of a synagogue or a church food pantry. Those are the partners that we have, and we're the distribution hub for millions and millions of pounds of food every year.
Thank you for that visual description. It makes it easier for me to understand. And
Yes.
the food, is that like donations giving to you by private people, or is it government financed? Do you receive food maybe that couldn't be sold elsewhere, or do you purchase the food yourselves? How does it work?
It's kind of all of that,
Mm-hmm.
kind of all of that. And I hope you can see in the screen behind me the workings of a food bank. It's a nonstop active place, people going all the time. So I'm sitting here in a living, breathing, active warehouse that is a food bank. So the sources of food, I'd say about 80% of the food that we receive is donated. And it's coming from our retail partners around our community and around the country. So our retail partners will be the grocery stores, the large grocery stores, the smaller grocery stores. And because of our relationship with Feeding America, they have agreements with these large national, international retail organizations. And we build, because of the agreement at the national level, here locally, we get acquainted with, build the relationship with, and create the supply chain connection between our local retailers and the food bank. So the majority of the food is donated. And we probably purchase, maybe we purchase about 12% or so, because what is donated doesn't make an entire meal. And we have to buy a lot of produce and protein, especially, fresh product to make sure that we're providing balanced and nutritious food to the people that we serve.
Got it. I can see what an important link you guys are between food waste and people being hungry. And thank you for explaining how the process works. That will help me and our listeners moving forward.
Right,
So,
right.
would you describe to me then the problems and the challenges that you're facing with the hunger in Florida and in the US?
Right, right. So yes, we are, it's such the community that we're in, I'm looking outside, the community that we're in is kind of this juxtaposition of affluence and poverty. And we probably see that, all of us, wherever we are, wherever we sit right now, as we listen to this podcast, there is this tale of two cities of this affluence and capacity right next door to poverty. So, for instance, here in Sarasota, and this is true, as I said, probably around the globe, I would say about 10% of the people in Sarasota live at or below the poverty level. Another 28% are right at the cusp. They're people who are working and have been working their lives and who are just not making enough to cover the cost of living. And what's happened with COVID is that those jobs, those families who were living on the brink, and those jobs have disappeared. Those jobs are going to be primarily service industry, tourism, based on the hospitality industry. And I know this is resonating with everyone who's listening. Those jobs have gone away. They have either gone away or have been significantly diminished. So far more people are now unemployed or underemployed than ever before. People who have worked their entire lives have found that they are no longer employed, and they, for the first time in their lives, have to visit a food bank. I can't imagine what that does to one's soul, to know that you have the capacity, you have supported your family, you have fed your family, and for the first time in your life, you're trying to find food to make sure your children are fed. It's a devastating phenomenon. And I know, as I said, that the people who are tuning into this, it's happening in their families, it's happening to their neighbors, their loved ones, and their friends right now.
I can imagine how hard that must be. And I can also imagine the importance of I guess you guys serve as a community builder as well, right? That the
Yes.
people that come to you see that, okay, more people are in this similar situation and we somehow need to collaborate at this point.
Very much so. A lot of the walls or the turf issues have had to go away in order to take care of people who are in this crisis. I can speak for our community. About 45% of the people who come to our food bank now are new, and they've never been to a food bank before in their lives. And nationally, the average is 60%. So it is a quantifiable factor, a quantifiable phenomenon, and one that we're seeing across this country, and I anticipate around the world. And I want to be optimistic. We have a vaccine coming, and rolling that out a little bit, and we expect to begin seeing some relief from this. But I think for our food bank and for my colleagues in the food bank world, we're anticipating a 1 to 2 year recovery period for these jobs to return and people to get back into their full-time employment. And I want to be very positive and optimistic about that. We are here to help families in any way we can. Building partnerships, like you said, finding collaborators, finding families where they are. That's been interesting to have to change your outreach methodologies because people have never heard of a food bank and never had to go to a food bank, and they're hungry and they need to feed their families. So it's been a different communication process too, and different partners, like you're saying. The collaborations are innovative and creative, and everybody's just getting into it together to reach these families and make sure they have the food and a roof over their head.
Mm. I can imagine the time it would take to recover, since I suspect many people have been forced to dig into their savings
Yes.
as well. So now they're even more exposed.
Mhm.
So what do you think then the impact of the change in administration is going to be for the hungry?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, isn't this yet one more unknown? We went through 2020 with the unknown of COVID, and every day bringing something we never expected and had to learn how to respond to. And this year, you know, it's probably going to be more of the same. We're familiar with COVID and what the demands will be on the food bank, but now we have this other variable, which a new administration. And you know, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but I have the sense from my colleagues who work the Hill that there's probably more receptivity and understanding of the government's role in providing relief. And whether that's through what's happening is enhanced availability of food product through our farmers, that's increasing. That's just awesome and exciting. Because farmers were hit as hard as service workers and others. So to be able to help, that's like being able to help in so many ways. But the government being able to access food from our farmers and make that available to food banks, that is happening and is increasing. And that's just a gift. That's just a godsend.
Mm.
And I also think there will be, I want to believe that there will be enhanced strategies to support our hunger safety net, which is the federally funded meal programs for kids in school and after school. I believe that those will be enhanced and strengthened because, you know, the government is a 500-pound gorilla when it comes to hunger relief programs. They have the resources and the capacity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you, so you're in a challenging situation right now. Like,
Yes.
what are you hoping, how do you hope things will progress for All Faiths Food Bank moving forward? Like, what challenges do you hope to overcome and what results do you hope to see?
Yes. So one of the things that we're doing now is, you know, in the throes of COVID, when it first happened in the middle of the pandemic, our goal was to simply get food out the door and onto the tables of people who needed it. And now we have a space to be more, just much more rigorous about how we do that, using our data, unemployment data and food stamp data to understand what communities have been most affected by COVID, where unemployment has spiked, where the food stamp SNAP applications have spiked, and really start targeting, honing in on those communities by adding additional mobile pantries, which is one of our refrigerated trucks loaded with food going into that community on a regular basis. We've added another 15 or more mobile pantries just in the last 2 months. We're continuing that analysis and will be just aggressively expanding and adding new agency partners and new distribution sites the plan is over the next 6 months. So that's what we're looking forward to is really being able to understand where those pockets of increased unemployment are and putting food right into that community, right into that neighborhood for those families during the time when they need it the most. So that's what's exciting us, is just being so very specific and kind of very targeted in addressing the new hunger needs that are here in our community. Very excited about doing that. Using outreach workers, which is a new phenomenon, not for the human services world and the social services world, but it's new for food banking. who are going door to door and asking people, do they need help, and giving them information about where they can get help. So there's opportunity to feed more people, and we're just really embracing that with enthusiasm and assertiveness.
So it sounds to me then that a big part of the challenge is to find the people that
Yeah.
needs the food bank.
Yeah.
Maybe, I guess there are like social and psychological barriers to even accepting that kind of help, to make them aware that it's available, to handle all the logistics. How much of that is a challenge and a bottleneck for All Saints Food Bank compared to All Faiths Food Bank? Sorry, compared to just having enough food. Like, do
Yes.
you have enough food for everybody?
No, no, just to be very straightforward about it, no, we don't. And I can speak for every one of the 200 food banks that are part of Feeding America. There is not enough food, and we will always, we struggle with prioritizing. It's unfortunate to say that, but you have to prioritize. As I mentioned, using data to understand where there are new pockets of hunger, and sometimes you prioritize and make decisions like, maybe we should feed children first. Maybe we should look at seniors. Maybe we should look at veterans. And those are tough decisions, tough calls to make. And you never want to have to do that. Never want to have to do that. But the fact is that there isn't enough food in a food bank. There's enough food. It's the distribution and the allocation of that food. I don't know if I've said that in the way I mean to say it. Enough food is grown and manufactured. It's making it a priority to get it into the vulnerable populations. And we have that will, and you have that will. We're hoping, you mentioned the government, we're hoping that they also will have that will to take the food that's available and being manufactured and equitably, important word, equitably, efficiently, and economically share it with those who need it the most.
Yeah, that explanation gives me clarity. Like, there has to be enough food in a sense, because food get wasted. So
Yes.
a big part of the problem should be logistics, and that's where All Faiths food banks come into the picture. Now, imagine someone is listening to this and say, okay, I want to be a part of the solution here. I want to help in some way. What can they do to be of service?
We live and breathe by volunteers. It is a volunteer, as all the food banks, volunteer driven. And when the pandemic hit, it was the worst possible storm, because our supply chain broke, and everybody saw that here in the United States. Remember going into the grocery store and the meat shelves were empty, except for maybe chicken bones. Whoever imagined that would happen in this country? But our supply chain broke. Our agency partners closed, and our volunteer base disappeared. They couldn't come into the food bank. They couldn't go out to our distributions. And it was just a quadruple whammy, because we also had to move from handing and providing food directly to our neighbors and our clients, to putting it in boxes and no touch, and putting it in the back of in the trunk of the car. And we're still doing
more logistics.
More logistics. We're still doing that. But if people, ways to help, how they can be a part of the solution, volunteer, help pack those bags and pack those boxes, help at the distributions themselves by mask up, put your gloves on, we distance, providing food, putting food in the trunk of people who need it, helping sign people up. There's so many ways to make a meaningful difference in people's lives, in hunger, helping to end hunger by volunteering. So that's one of the ways right off the top. A quick statistic, we lost half of our volunteer base last year, half. They're just now coming back in, feeling safe, and we have a safe environment for them. But half of our volunteers simply, they couldn't come into the facility because of their own health reasons or because of COVID for one reason or another. We're gearing back up again, and I'm speaking for all of the food banks that we are beginning to gear up our volunteer base again. So volunteering is important. I think being an advocate for hunger relief, recognizing for yourself and with those you know that hunger and food insecurity is real, and it's so real right now because of COVID. It's legitimate. It's here. We're seeing it. We're experiencing it. Be an advocate. Understand the underlying causes of food insecurity. Let people know it's happening and that their help is needed. It's real. And I think everyone who's listening to your podcast knows it's in their lives. It's in the close circle of their family and friends, people who lost jobs and people who are seeking food. So volunteering and advocacy. Another area, some food banks are now accepting food donations. You can always donate. Probably non-perishable foods would be preferred. I know it would be preferred, especially protein, hard to come by and the most expensive. So donated protein to your local food bank. Find your local food bank. Go to Feeding America and put in where you live, and 3, 6 different food banks will be in your area. Find your local food bank through Feeding America and talk with them about how you can help right there in your neighborhood. Well, that'd be awesome if people did that. And also there's always the financial support for a food bank. For us, $1 helps us provide 5 meals. Talking with your local food bank, they can tell you what their economies of scale are. They can tell you what their needs are. They can tell you how you can plug in and make a real difference to a hungry child.
Yeah, I'm letting the statistic of 50% volunteer loss and the difficulties that is leading to sink in. And I can see the importance of being a part of the solution then, and also the feeling that must create of really helping out. We're coming towards the end of this interview now, and I want to say thank you, Sandra, for taking the time to speak with us today. It was, I appreciated the opportunity to learn about the hunger problems that are being caused by COVID.
Tell you that the joy is all mine to be able to share this information and to think that maybe 1 or 2 people are converting to advocacy for food insecurity and will find out where their local food bank is and get really involved in making a difference. It's a joy, and the pleasure is all mine.
Let's make it happen. And for you listening, if you want to be a part of that, go into YouTube or to Spotify and press subscribe, because that will show the algorithms that this conversation is important, so more people can learn about the hunger problems that the world is facing. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.